Surprise, surprise, the unwashed masses, the Gentiles who gave their money system to a foreign power. They don't like it how the FEMA agency is doing business down in Houston, Texas. They're bringing FEMA barges to town. They look a lot like jails and prisons. They're going to separate the males from the females. They're going to separate the families, and quite frankly, the unwashed masses don't care for it too much. Now I know there'll be many snowflakes out there who will not like my condescending attitude, but quite frankly, I've been preaching for a couple years now that it's not going to end well when you give your money to a foreign power, when you give control of your banking system to them. The Federal Reserve banking cartel, you see, they are going to be taken care of very, very well. They're going to live in the golden towers, and the government agencies are there to support them. So I'm going to go with my condescending attitude today, and it's hard to believe, but it's actually been 2 years. 2 years ago in September that I made a couple videos about the FEMA camps, and many people told me that I was a government shill, and there's a bunch of trolls rolling around, but I hate to tell you, but I told you so back then, that if you don't have a way of taking care of yourself, if you do not have silver, food, and ammo, well, you're going to be at the mercy of the government, aka FEMA camps. But what is everybody worried about today? And that would be the FEMA barges. So they are being hauled into Texas as we speak. And I don't want to alarm you, but there is an inside joke going on through the FEMA agencies that they're called a floating isolation unit. I like that, a floating isolation unit. Maybe it's because when the families come in, you have to separate the males from the females, and you have to separate the kids. You got to do it the government way. You've got to do it the fascist way. And if you don't have 2 nickels to rub together, if you don't have a pot to piss in, if you don't have a hoard of silver to back you up, well, guess what? Beggars cannot be choosy. Now, you can always live under the bridge. Hell, thousands of people live under the bridge in Las Vegas. I mean, we don't get too much water in Vegas. And when we do get the flash floods, it sort of washes their homes away. But hey, they seem to get by. So if you don't like to live under a bridge, well, you're going to have to go with the floating barges. Now, I will be honest with you. I really don't like to take a condescending attitude towards this sad situation. Quite frankly, we're all one bad beat away from being homeless on the street. So yes, my heart goes out to the people who have no job, they have no pension, and they have no hope. And there they are. They're sitting in Houston or Miami or wherever, and they don't have any family or friends to help them. Yes, my heart goes out. But we have to understand, how did we get ourselves into this situation? And possibly even more important, is it going to get worse? Of course it's going to get worse. See, there's going to be empty shelves in many of the major cities. Not just when the hurricanes hit, not just when the earthquake hit. It also has to do with the dollar in China and Russia and the world. So yes, it's going to get worse. So the first thing we have to ask ourselves, how did we get into this situation, and how do we get ourselves out of this situation, and how do you prevent yourself from ending up in this FEMA camp? Because yes, it's going to get worse. Now, why is it going to get worse? It's because FEMA and all the other agencies, all the law enforcement government agencies, are there for one reason: to protect the rich and to support the corporations. Yes, we're talking about fascism here. And of course, what is fascism all about? Fascism is about power. That's it. Power over you and I. Power over the unwashed masses. Goes the same thing for the central bank, the Federal Reserve banking cartel. What is about? What it is about? It's about power. So, see, you cannot have fascism without central banking. You cannot have powerful government agencies without a Federal Reserve banking cartel where they push a button and guess who gets all the money? You see, we're going to have to go over this, whether you like it or not. We have to get to the bottom of it. You see, when Wall Street and the New York bankers push a button and they create the fake money, who do you think gets it? Yes, Mr. Munchkin, Mr. Trump, Mr. George Soros, the Koch brothers. They have one thing in common. All of these people who run the corporations, all of these rich bastards have one thing in common. They're part of a tribe that you and I are not part of. So you don't have to be a rocket scientist here. Quite frankly, a fifth grader could figure it out. Their tribe is going to be extremely rich forever, and you and I are going to be poor forever. The unwashed masses and the Gentiles are going to have to live on the FEMA barges until you pull your head out of your ass. Oh, and I can hear the young Gentiles now, the 25-year-old Gentiles. He said, hey, I didn't give the banking system over to that tribe. No, that was my great-great-grandfather who did that. Okay, sure. Let's blame it on Grandpa. Let's blame it on great-great-grandpa. Yeah, they took your banking system and they gave the power to create money to a foreign power. Yes, they did it. Your grandfather did that. Your great-grandfather was a complete idiot and moron. But does that mean that you and I have to be idiots and morons? No. What we really have to do is stop playing in the game. We have to put our foot down. You see, what would happen if we all just said, hey, you can call your congressman till you're blue in the face. You can yell and scream, do everything you have to do. But you have to put your foot down and say, hey, listen, we're not going to play this crooked game anymore. I don't want to be in a system where a foreign power has control over my money. I want Gentiles in control of the banking system. Hell, the Gentiles are the majority. Correct me if I'm wrong here. The Gentiles are the vast majority of this country. We are the greatest part of this country. And yes, we are being persecuted. We are being stepped on. We are being put in FEMA barges. We are living under the bridges. We have SNAP cards and Section 8. We are nothing more than a number. We are a number to be harvested. They don't even know your name. Yes, I'm talking about Wall Street. I'm talking about the fascist corporations who are in bed with the Federal Reserve banking cartel. We are being harvested. That's what all us Gentiles, that's what us unwashed masses all have in common. We are cattle to be slaughtered by them as they laugh their asses off. So we're not going to fix this problem with FEMA until we understand how we got into it. You have to take control of your banking system. If you are 300 million Gentiles, then you need to be in control of the money, not them. Because look what happened when you gave control of the money to them. They live in golden towers. Trust me, they're not going to end up in the barges. They're going to get in their jet plane and fly away. Let me correct myself. They're going to get in a government jet plane and fly away. And it's going to cost the taxpayers probably $20,000, $30,000. But they're going to use a government plane to get away, to fly to their golden towers that was paid for by the taxpayers who contributed to the Federal Reserve banking cartel. So I'm not going to ramble on forever. I'm not going to beat a dead horse here. I'm just going to give you the 2-year update. It was 2 years ago that I said you're going to have to stack your silver. You see, because this is a complicated situation. As I said before, it's going to get worse. The camps are going to get worse because the rich have to feel safe. And the rich bastards will not feel safe. They're not going to feel safe unless they have a government agency who has corralled you and put you in an area where the rich feel that you're no danger to them. And the reason why it's going to get worse, the reason why it's complicated, because now we got the Chinese to deal with. The Chinese money is now going to be a reserve currency, and as the dollar sinks, we're all going to end up in the barges if you're going to rely on the dollar, which is no longer the dollar. It's the Federal Reserve banking note. So what I'm trying to say here is the problem is the Federal Reserve banking cartel, and it's going to get worse and worse until we put Gentiles in control of our banking system. Am I getting through here? So in closing here, I will say this. I am not changing my tune from 2 years ago. The only thing that has changed since then is that the decline of America is accelerating. So I will elaborate. 2 years ago, I focused on silver because silver is what you will need if you stay in America. Now, I don't know if I mentioned gold, but if you have to flee the country, if it really gets that bad and you feel like you have to flee the country, I don't know where you're going to go to, maybe South America or wherever, you're probably going to need gold or diamonds. We're not going to go into that. All you need to know that you're not going to be able to take the Federal Reserve notes with you. They're not going to be worth a warm bucket of spit. When the event happens, there's going to be many, many FEMA camps up and running. You see, they can even get a FEMA camp up and running in 2 weeks. Even if it's not there yet. The military boys were experimenting over in the desert for the last 16 years. They can put these FEMA camps together really quick. They are going to be the government. And you and I are going to be sitting our ass in these FEMA units. Whether it be a floating isolation unit or an isolation unit in the desert. It doesn't matter where it is, but it will have FEMA all across it in big letters. And they want you and I in there unless you can take care of yourself. So I'm going to focus on this in closing. You're going to have to be in a small town with family. You're going to have to stockpile some food. You're going to have to stockpile some silver and ammo. I'm just trying to elaborate from the video I made 2 years ago because I did not have enough time and I was not clear enough that yes, it's going to get worse and worse. And what Americans are going to have to do, they're going to have to study what happened to the Native Americans. How did the Native Americans fare when they relied on the government for survival? It comes down to this. If you rely on the government for your survival, you're going to end up on a reservation like the Native Indians, or you're going to end up in a floating isolation unit. So don't make fun of me when I say stack up your silver, because you're going to need it. And if you plan on fleeing the country, you're going to need some gold and diamonds. How do I know this? Because every country that broke down, from Vietnam to Germany, you needed gold to get out of the country. You're going to need help to get out of the country. And people are going to have to take huge risk to get you out of the country. And they're not going to do that for nothing. And they're not going to do it for the Federal Reserve note that is collapsing. They're going to want something hard, something that when you drop it on your toes, it hurts. Okay, so maybe you don't want to flee. Maybe you don't want to run. This is your country, and you're going to stay here and make it work. Well, there could be something even more important than gold and silver, and that would be food, ammo, and family. Yes. But it's not going to hurt you to stack up some silver, and maybe then you'll be able to help your family. Just a few thoughts on the FEMA barges or the floating isolation units.